John Berman is here. Chris is off today. All eyes are on Ferguson, Missouri this morning, where a fifth night of protests against police was perhaps the ugliest night yet. You can see the chaos as police unload tear gas and flash bombs on demonstrators who officials there say were throwing Molotov cocktails. This all stemmed from the police shooting death of an unarmed teenager, Michael Brown. This video that you're looking at right here is from a local radio station there. Our local affiliate says 2 officers were hurt and 16 people arrested, including 2 reporters who had been working in a fast food restaurant at the time.
Missouri's Governor Jay Nixon headed to Ferguson again today. President Obama has also been briefed. And cell phone video obtained by CNN shows a family member being kept away from Michael Brown's body after the shooting. The officer remains unidentified right now, still because of safety concerns. I want to get back to CNN's Ana Cabrera right now, live in Ferguson. Ana, what's it like there this morning?
John, we are just outside the police station where all of those protests came to an end just 4 or 5 hours ago. You can see it's calm. It is quiet here. A break in the unrest this morning. We've learned that the police chief here in Ferguson will be meeting with the parents of Michael Brown today, along with a representative from the NAACP, as well as a representative of the U.S. Justice Department's Community Relations Division, who is also here on the ground in Ferguson. This, as the governor comes to visit here again for a second time in less than a week, and we head into another day of uncertainty. Overnight, Ferguson erupted, perhaps the most chaotic protest and police response yet. Angry crowds throwing bottles at law enforcement, and police firing tear gas and flashbangs to disperse them. A TV news crew on the scene runs for cover after a tear gas canister lands directly in front of them.
There it goes there, now firing onto the crowd. Firing rubber bullets.
Dramatic video shot by a reporter on the ground captures utter chaos. Police advance on the protesters, sending them running in fear. As officers fire rubber bullets and smoke grenades in this residential neighborhood. At least 18 arrested overnight, including 2 journalists detained while police attempted to clear out a local McDonald's. The altercation caught on camera.
Let's go. We don't have time to ask questions. Let's go.
This, as new cell phone video from just after Brown was killed, captures the heartbreaking moment when a man believed to be Brown's uncle rushes to his lifeless body and is immediately pushed away by police. The witness who captured this video says she also saw the shooting unfold, telling CNN's Dawn Lemon exclusively the details of what she witnessed.
What I saw was when the cop and Michael were like wrestling through the window. It looked as if Michael was pushing off and the cop was trying to pull him in. Then the cop shot a fire through the window. Michael breaks away and he starts running away from the officer. The officer gets out of his vehicle and pursues Michael as he's shooting his weapon. Michael jerks his body as if he was hit. Then he turns around, faces the officer, and puts his hands up. And the officer continues to shoot him until he goes down to the ground.
Another eyewitness describes how the officer repeatedly shot Brown, who was unarmed.
He was trying to get away from him. Why did he continue to shoot at him?
Exactly.
I still don't get that part at all. Like, why was he killed trying to get away from the officer?
And even when he turned around and put his arms in the air, he was being overkilled. Shot multiple times.
Multiple witnesses tell a similar story, while police maintain Brown assaulted the officer in his car and tried to take his weapon.
An officer involved shooting out of Ferguson. 2190 just said that they just had some more shots fired in the area.
The police chief now says the officer suffered injuries to his face during the altercation and was taken to a local hospital.
He's very shaken about what happened that day and in the aftermath.
Earlier Wednesday, police had asked that all protests be held during the daytime, but Wednesday night's protests continued as scheduled. Police responded with force.
They're now firing onto the crowd.
And because things are so heated here on the ground, we're seeing a trickle-down effect. We now have learned that the start of the school year has been postponed because of all of this. Classes were supposed to start today, but now have been postponed to start on Monday in the hopes that the situation can stabilize or settle down. But many here fear that things could still escalate. We know the group Anonymous, which has been so active on social media and has quite a following, is now calling for a national day of rage today, urging people all around the country to come out and protest in solidarity with the people of Ferguson. John?
In the city of Ferguson.
Cabrera in Ferguson for us. Thanks so much. Kate.
Thank you so much. Let's bring in the attorney for Michael Brown's family, Benjamin Crump. Mr. Crump, you will remember, also represented Trayvon Martin's family. Mr. Crump, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Of course. We were just hearing from our reporter on the ground, Ana Cabrera. She is hearing of a meeting between the Brown family and the police chief. What can you tell us?
Not aware of that meeting taking place. We are trying to set a meeting with the members of the Justice Department.
Would you does Michael Brown's parents want to meet with the police chief?
Well, they've been waiting to hear what happened when their son was killed in broad daylight, and they've been waiting very patiently, but they haven't heard any explanations.
So they would be open to a meeting if the police chief made himself available?
Well, they would be open to a meeting with the police chief to tell them why the officer shot their son in broad daylight. They are very emotional about this, as any parents would be, Kate.
And that's very understandable. And what would they like? You say they want to hear, that's what they want to hear from the police chief. What happened that day? What would they also, I'm sure, what would they like to say? Or what questions do they have for the police chief if that meeting does take place?
They want to know, how can you justify shooting their unarmed 18-year-old son multiple times in the middle of the street in broad daylight? He had a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops on. It's obvious that he didn't have a weapon. So, like all the people in that community and many people around the country, they're just in shock that this could happen to an unarmed teenager in broad daylight. It makes no sense, and they feel there's no way it could be justified.
Well, and some of the shock we're also seeing play out in terms of anger and outrage. We saw really the streets of Ferguson, Missouri erupt overnight. I know you've seen some of the video that we've been playing on our air. The reporters have been showing. What does the family say? What is the family making of the violence that they saw overnight?
Both Leslie and Michael and all their family have been asking that people be responsible and protest peacefully, but not to do irresponsible things and not to be violent. That isn't what will be the appropriate legacy and memory for Michael Brown Jr. What we need to do is make sure we're concentrating on getting justice for Michael, not just being angry. And so they're sending a message to everybody who truly cares about Michael Brown and his family. Let's try to be peaceful and responsible in our protests, because understand, Kate, these people saw in that community what happened to this child, and they saw his body laying out there on the ground for hours. And it was very troubling because many of these people know this family, and they are asking themselves, if it could happen to him, it could happen to my child. And it is very troubling, and especially with no transparency. They will give the fact and say, well, the officer is injured, but they won't even tell the family how many times their son was shot. Now, how is that fair?
As you mentioned, the officer being injured, that is just coming out. They came out yesterday that we learned that the police are saying that the officer involved was treated at a hospital for a swollen face. They do maintain that a fight of some kind took place. Do you leave open that possibility?
Well, all the witness accounts said that the officer tried to confront Michael, and so they all have said that, but we don't know what happened. But what we do know, Kate, is this. There is nothing Michael Brown could have done to justify him being executed in broad daylight. And this is the worst police shooting I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them. And it is very troubling, and we have to get answers, and they have to be transparent. And that's why we're calling on the Justice Department and the Attorney General to do an independent autopsy, because the trajectory of these bullets are going to be a very important factor in trying to understand this case, because everybody is looking at this case. There's colorblind curiosity on this case. Everybody wants to know, not just black people, white people, Hispanic people, anybody who's looking is saying, how do you justify killing a kid who's unarmed in broad daylight, multiple shots?
Well, and as horrible as it is, some of the answers that his parents may be seeking may come from an autopsy. I've seen some reporting that his body has been released to the family. Is that the case? If so, what is the family going to do? Do you have an independent autopsy already set up?
Yes, ma'am. But we want the federal Justice Department to do an autopsy that's completely independent. So St. Louis law enforcement agency has done their autopsy, but the family and the community are very distrustful because they don't feel that in the past things have been transparent, even with the officer's name. You know, the first opportunity to show everybody they're going to be very open and transparent, they say, no, well, we're not going to get the officer's name.
And that has been the big question of the police department withholding the identity of the officer. Does the family know the identity of this officer?
The family knows nothing, Kate. And we want to know the identity of the officer because we want to know what is his history, what's in his jacket, as they say. Has he had any issues before like this? Has he been through cultural sensitivity training? Has he been through use of force training? All these are going to be incredibly important questions when you get down to the crux of the matter of why Michael Brown was executed in broad daylight and armed.
The big question, of course, is that what happened that day? Those are the answers that his parents deserve, the community deserves. You have also been there for days now. You've seen the anger. We're seeing the outrage play out on a daily basis. At this point, what do you think will calm people down?
I think transparency, Kate, and understand we want to make it loud and clear. We asked everybody, please respect the rule of law. We don't want anybody to get hurt over trying to stand up for Michael Brown and the tragic way that he was killed. Transparency is the key. People need to have confidence and trust that there's going to be an independent investigation, that there's going to be due process for Michael Brown, and that his family get the answers so we can say the system works equally and fair for Michael Brown as well as the police. We want equal transparency, but right now it's been one-sided. The police officer got hit, and they say, don't even tell us how many times Michael Brown got hit with bullets. That is not transparency.
Benjamin Crump, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll continue to stay on top of the story as we have the violence breaking out, but as he said, keeping the focus on finding out what happened to that 18-year-old boy, what happened that day, Saturday, get some answers for his family.
They need that at the very least, don't they, Kate?
That's exactly right.
All right, let's take a look at our headlines at